I'm the Analyst, and I'm here to talk about Hollywood's biggest box office bombs. Today we'll be talking about another film from prestigious director Ridley Scott, whom we previously countered with G.I. Jane a few months back. Now, Ridley Scott has been directing cinematic features since 1979 with his groundbreaking Alien, and while he's very much hit or miss, he's still around today, having directed a number of iconic films such as Blade Runner, Thelma and Louise, and Gladiator, among others. What we're going to be talking about today is not one of them. Before the release of Alien Covenant, let's look at another Ridley Scott flop. But which one? He has made quite a few critical and commercial failures, many of which will be future episodes of this show. But for today's episode, what shall I go with? As I decide, you know what, let's look at the box office. Maybe that'll give me some inspiration. Whoa! King Arthur bombed hard. And so, in its honor, or rather in dishonor of that, let's look at one of his medieval films. This is Robin Hood. In 2010, Universal released this retelling of the fabled archer, but told it as a prequel as to how Robin Hood became an outlaw and met Maid Marian. Ridley Scott directed it with Russell Crowe, with whom Scott had already collaborated on Gladiator, A Good Year, American Gangster, and Body of Lies. And Crowe would portray the titular character Robin Hood, while Cate Blanchett would portray Maid Marian. Now, Relativity Media and Imagine Entertainment, who previously had a film covered on this show, The Alamo, produced. Both of these production companies are also hit or miss, with the former being more miss than hit in the preceding few months, with films such as Green Zone, The Wolfman, and Repo Men among their clunkers. Brian Hedlund, who had won an Oscar for writing the Russell Crowe starring LA Confidential, would write the script here. Though the day before he won his Oscar, he won the Razzie for writing The Postman. So his track record isn't that good either. Of course, very few people in Hollywood have stellar track records, and many films are comprised of individuals that are hit or miss. But this film wound up being much more of a miss. Now let's dive right in. The film opens with Nottingham, where Maid Marian deals with grain thieves, and it's pretty dark, sort of telling for the general aesthetic of the film. Then in France, we meet Robin Longstride, aka Robin Hood, along with two of the merry men, archers Alan Adale and Will Scarlet, portrayed by Alan Doyle and Scott Grimes, respectively. Hey, he's wearing a hood! Robin Hood, everybody! Yay! Anyway, they are serving under King Richard the Lionheart, portrayed by Danny Huston, during the Third Crusade, as they besiege the Château de Callot-Chabrol, where we also meet Little John, a soldier and a future member of the Merry Men, portrayed by Kevin Durand. And this opening action sequence actually hits the mark. It's reasonably easy to tell what's going on, there's no fast-paced, cluttered editing, and it's not dark. Meanwhile, back in London, we meet Prince John, played by Oscar Isaac, and his mother, Eleanor, portrayed by Aileen Atkins, who is berating his improprieties with the niece of the King of France, Isabella, portrayed by Léa Seydoux. One thing you notice throughout the film is that Isaac doesn't exactly put up a good performance.
She is my Eleanor.
It's not bargain for the loyalty that every subject...
Going for hammy in comparison to the more somber tone of the film. Of course, that's probably a justifiable move, as the whole film is rather dour. Back in France, the king asks Robin Hood for his opinions on the crusade, and Robin's blunt, negative answer gets him and his men locked in stocks. Some king. An honest answer gets you thrown in the stocks. Soon after, we cut to Godfrey, played by Mark Strong, meeting the French king and discussing the plans to invade England, where Godfrey will kill Richard I en route to England, and then destabilize the country to get them in order to oppose the future King John, which would result in a civil war that will allow France to conquer England and make Godfrey a handsomely rewarded man. In the battle that ensues the next day, Richard is fatally slain by the cook, and the castle does not fall. Now, in real life, Richard I actually died in his attempt to take the castle. Though the details are admittedly sketchy, the circumstances were likely a bit different than what the film portrays. And after learning of the king's death, Robin and his men escape, taking Little John with them to go to England before crossing becomes borderline impossible. While the convoy carrying Richard's things is then attacked by French knights led by Godfrey, only to be driven back by Robin and his merry men, killing most of the French, and Robin grazes Godfrey's cheek, but he escapes. As one of the knights, Robin Locksley, dies, he asks that Robin Hood take his place, care for his widow, and return his sword to his father. The four successfully impersonate the dead English knights, and return to England, where they witness Prince John become the new King of England. Going to Locksley's home village of Nottingham, Robin meets Locksley's widow, Maid Marian, and her blind father, Walter, portrayed by Max von Sydow. While Marian is cold to Robin, Walter urges her to maintain the facade of Robin Hood being her husband to protect the family lands. And here, Maid Marian isn't the damsel in distress. She is fairly badass. First with the opening scene, and
I sleep with a dagger. If you so much as move to touch me, I will sever your manhood.
of course, when Robin recovers grain stolen from the corrupt church taken as taxes, she begins to warm up to him. John begins to institute new and hefty taxes upon the people, and has Godfrey, the two breastfed from the same person, he has Godfrey enforce them, and Godfrey uses this as an opportunity to rile up the lords and go on a spree of terror, causing much destruction and death under the guise of serving the King of England. While speaking with Walter, Robin learns more about his father, who had been an advocate for the rights of the subjects, and resulting in his death, leading Robin to revisit his hometown and finds a message hidden underneath a stone.
What does it mean?
It means never give up.
Motivated by this, Robin Hood attends a meeting of the lords held by the king in an attempt to regain support, and pushes his father's ideas, necessitating a need for a charter of rights among men, to which King John is forced to agree in order to prevent the other Englishmen from turning on him. Godfrey attacks Nottingham and challenges the blind Walter to a duel, having gloated about killing his son, and when Walter manages to hit him, Godfrey murders him, cementing him as an utterly unsympathetic monster. And seeing how he and John fed from the same bosom, what does that say about King John? Considering how he acted for much of the film, it ain't good. The French invade at the White Cliffs of Dover, only to be countered by the English forces, who had not divided as the French expected, with Robin Hood, King John, and Maid Marian clad in her widow's armor among them. In the resulting battle, Robin kills Godfrey with an arrow to the neck, resulting in the French forces surrendering not to King John, but to Robin Hood. Okay, did this invasion really happen? Well, the events of this film are loosely inspired by the First Barons' War in 1215, where the French invaded England while it was under civil war, as King John refused to recognize the Magna Carta. And did anyone else notice that this invasion scene is basically a ripoff of the Normandy landing scene from Saving Private Ryan, even down to the boats? As a result of the battle, King John sees Robin Hood as a threat to his rule, burns the Charter of the Forest, and declares him an outlaw in the hammiest delivery possible.
To be an outlaw!
This is definitely an anachronism, as the Charter would not only not burn, but it wouldn't even be signed for at least 17 more years. The sheriff posts the wanted poster, only for it to be nailed to a tree by an arrow courtesy of Robin Hood himself. Unseen, of course, and the film ends Robin riding into the woods with his band of merry men, including many of the grain thieves at the start of the film, setting up a village with Maid Marian, who narrates. Hey, did you know this was originally supposed to be a film focusing on the Sheriff of Nottingham, with Robin being the anti-hero investigated for murder? Thank the numerous rewrites for turning that into what this movie is today. And that was Robin Hood. And you know what I've been saying about being hit or miss? This film is very much hit and miss, as the action sequences and most of the performances generally hit, but some of them also miss. Furthermore, there are
the names of all the
film, but they end up coming off as pretentious and self-important, with an overall tone that lacks the fun and spirit of the characters' other outings. In short, it's boring. Universal would pump in a massive $200 million into the production of the film, which would be absurdly expensive for a medieval film, especially since the genre is one of the worst bets in the business. On top of that, they would invest another $120 million into worldwide marketing, meaning they had $320 million invested in this drama. However, Universal had a card up their sleeve. As mentioned above, Ridley Scott and Russell Crowe had previously made Gladiator, which had not only won Best Picture back in 2000, but had a massive fan base and is still widely remembered today. And the marketing pushed that angle extensively, making Robin Hood resemble a spiritual sequel to Gladiator. Robin Hood opened on May 14th, 2010, and opened in second place, with $36.06 million, behind the second weekend of Iron Man 2. While on the high end of expectations, and while it was slightly better than Gladiator in raw gross, it sold quite a few less tickets. Unfortunately, it got a weak B- cinema score, and tying into its mostly mixed reviews, which would be a 43% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, it probably wasn't going to leg out very well. In its second weekend, Robin Hood fell a relatively modest 48% against Shrek Forever After, which was a reasonable hold, considering its lackluster reception, then fell another 45% the following weekend against Prince of Persia and Sex and the City 2. By the end of its domestic theatrical run, Robin Hood would make $105.27 million, the second biggest medieval film of all time, only behind Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Now, while medieval films haven't caught on in America, they tend to show more strength in foreign markets, and Robin Hood was no exception, making $216.4 million, with the major markets being the United Kingdom, France, Australia, Germany, Italy, Spain, and Russia. The worldwide gross would be $321.67 million. And after theaters take their cut of the gross, Universal would be left with $131.5 million. Covering the ad spend, though, most of the budget would be left at a loss. The estimated theatrical loss on this film is $188.5 million. Thanks for watching, press the like button, be sure to subscribe, and follow me on Twitter.
They march against their king, Marshal. Their king.